Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody is having an incredible day. I hope everybody is becoming the very best versions of themselves and finding a way to seek the beauty in life. I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen, an incredible show. And I want to welcome everybody to a conversation that dives deep into the uncharted territories where technology, human potential, and the psychedelic frontier collide. Today, we are joined by a true maverick, a mind that defies convention and embodies the spirit of revolution in both thought and action. Sabba Nahand isn't your average startup visionary. He's a bridge between worlds. From his early days overcoming the odds with a life-saving blood transfusion to leading high-impact ventures across continents, Sabba's journey is a fusion of the personal, the global, and the deeply transformative. His 20-plus years in the tech arena, guiding teams at Dell and 2U, mentoring at 1776 DC, and advising groundbreaking startups at the TechTavern are just the foundation of his radically human-centered approach to leadership. But what sets Sabba apart is his fearless pursuit of what can be, a believer in the power of psychedelics to unlock untapped human potential and disrupt the very fabric of our understanding. Sabba has one foot planted firmly in the world of cutting-edge technology and the other in the realms of altered consciousness. Fresh off an immersive experience at Burning Man, Sabba is here to explore ideas that challenge the boundaries of our reality, where AI, psychedelics, and human relationships intersect to create entirely new dimensions of existence. Sabba, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm great, George. Thank you. What an amazing intro. I'm going to have to copy that and keep it somewhere, maybe frame it on my wall. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, I want to set the stage. Before we got started, you and I were talking about the times we live in, and they're truly transformative for
Yeah.
those who are getting to see it on the first hand. But maybe we could just kind of jump right into this. I labeled
Sure.
this particular talk Bruce Lee, blood transfusions, and Burning Man. And so
That's amazing. I mean, amazing. Let's do it.
Okay. So, a lot of people who grew up in my generation, or maybe your generation or our
Yeah.
generation, they grew up on these Bruce Lee films. But he has this famous quote that says, "Be like water."
Oh, yeah.
And, be water, my friend. How has this particular philosophy shaped your approach to business and life, particularly in the ever fluid world of startups?
Yes. Great question to kick it off. Water is fluid. It flows. It shapes and mimics whatever you put it in. You put it in a teacup, it's a teacup. You put it in a bowl, it's a bowl. And I think that Bruce Lee, I cannot say it as great and amazing as Bruce Lee did, but it's all about being in flow state. It's about going with the flow. It's about understanding that, like, we don't have any control. When we think we do, we don't have any control in life, in business. And most importantly, we cannot control our outcomes. We just have to be in flow state. We have to surrender. And once we do that, I truly believe, and it's been very helpful for me. And there's times where I have to remind myself that when we stop focusing on outcomes and we focus on the journey in a state of flow is when everything comes together.
Yeah,
That's
it's well said. It's
yeah.
yeah. It brings up the idea of awareness. Like, you can't,
Yes.
if you're focused on the past or the future, like, you're not really paying attention to the now. Like, that's a whole nother state of awareness, right?
Totally. It's I get stuck on this all the time. You focus on the past, it creates anxiety, it creates frustration, it creates this, again, things that you can't control. Like, I can't change the past. I have,
Right.
My 42 years in life, I've made many mistakes. I've hurt many people and I've done some dumb shit. But
Sure.
I've learned from those and I've grown from them. And there are moments where I'm like, I could have done that differently. But why? Like, that doesn't do anything for me. Maybe, like, moving forward, if I'm in a situation that it puts me in the same spot as I was in the past, I was like, you know what? I've been here before. And why Sabba and present Sabba knows that, this is how you would manage it. So, yeah.
This brings up like a profound idea of time. It sounds like in some ways you're time traveling, and maybe that's how we should begin to look at ourselves and our experiences. It's like, you couldn't have changed what happened in the past. Like, no matter what you've done, you couldn't change that. But maybe that happens so that you can change it in the future. It kind of alters our perception of time. What's your thoughts on that?
It really does. This, I wouldn't call it a motto, but in many settings in my life, work, personal, sitting with plant medicine, doing deep work, inner work, I have this motto that comes up, and it's I've been here before. And I'm getting even goosebumps saying that, because
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing, and that just reminds me of like, yeah, I've been here. Whatever, you can go whatever philosophy. You can go philosophy
Yeah.
of reincarnation, you can go philosophy of old experiences, but it's like, I've been here before. And it just calms you, it puts you present, it grounds you into this space of like, whatever that is about to come to me, whether it's a lesson, outcome, etc. I'm here, and I've been here before, and it just calms you down. And even before like a sales meeting or an investor pitch, right before I close my eyes, as I did before, I light up my Palo Santo, grounded, and then I say, I've been here before. Man, that is such a good thing. It's such a powerful thing to say, because it just puts you in a really comfortable state of mind.
Yeah.
And that's time
It's
travel. Like, hey, like, hey, I've been here before, right? So
Yeah, it it blows my mind to think about it from that aspect, and I hope more people begin to sort of adopt that philosophy, and just having those mantras around to
yeah,
ground yourself and put you in the
totally.
right state of mind. You know, it does bring up the thought of identity to me, which leads me to the second part of this question here, which is,
Sure.
in a recent interview, I've heard you tell a story about a blood transfusion when you were
Yeah.
a baby. And in
Yeah.
some ways, that feels symbiotic of transformation and renewal. How
Mm.
has this experience shaped your perspective on life, identity, and what it means to be truly alive in both a biological and spiritual sense?
Man, that is oh, we're gonna start crying in the first 5 minutes. Cool. Okay, that's fine. Um, it's okay. It's okay. It's good. So I was born. I'm Iranian. I was born in Iran, and I was born for some. I'll do a quick history lesson. I was born in the
Yeah.
early '80s,
Okay.
and in Iran. And that was during the war. It was during the Iran-Iraq War. It was right after the revolution. So government takeovers. There was a lot of massive changes in that country that led to distress and chaos and death and all of that. And my mother, who was obviously pregnant with me, could no longer hold me in. I was born 2 months early. I was a premature baby because of the war, the chaos. We were literally in. I wouldn't say we were in this in the like war front, but we were in the capital of Iran, which was obviously a lot of things was happening. You could see gunfire and bombs like from afar, and that was just a stressful time for my family. And my mother couldn't hold me in, so I was born a premature baby. And when I was born, our family doctor told told my parents that I needed a blood transfusion to stay alive, and the only place I can go was a hospital across town. So, for all intents and purposes, at that moment, my father said goodbye to my mother and sister, because we didn't know. He didn't know that like what we were going to get ourselves into, how far we had to drive, and at that moment, he thought that this was the final goodbye, and he said goodbye, and we went to this hospital. He saved my parents, my father saved my life with this blood transfusion. And it took many years to recognize the impact of that, how coming into this world in a state of chaos
Yep.
and near death really, for better or worse, framed how was the foundation of my life and growing up as a child and an adult, which I'll touch on in a moment. And that was just powerful. And for the longest time, we would joke around like, "Oh, you were a war baby, ha ha, that's so funny." Like, and then you start doing inner work, and then you start like confronting or even embracing all the different parts of yourself, and you're like, "Oh shit, of course I was this timid, scared, angry kid growing up. Of course I was fighting these weird demons, and of course I was always angry at the world. Like, why wouldn't I be? Like, I was born in the middle of war and I almost died, and starting to connect those dots, really, it was almost like a healing moment. It was like understanding of like, of course, little Saba, like, of course you had this, like, it's okay, you're safe now. And yeah, I mean, I'll stop there. Like, this kind of, it was just this moment of like, whoa, like I grew up as a kid who, we were immigrants into this country, into the US. We lived in a really rough neighborhood. predominantly like Black and Hispanic, and I didn't fit in. I got bullied, and I started getting angry. And then I started playing sports, and I started channeling my anger in different ways. But then I was also timid and scared. And that transitioned into like my teenage years. And I didn't understand how to navigate the world because of that, right? Because I didn't know who to be. I always wanted to be nice. I pretended everyone was my friend and everybody liked the nice Sabba, but I was mad. I was angry behind closed doors. Because I didn't know who I was, and I knew that there was something deeper and heavier out there. I'll stop there because like there's so many connections in life, but yeah, that's the blood transfusion story.
Man, it's so interesting that you bring up the way in which you were brought into chaos, and then you
Yeah,
find yourself later in life able to thrive in this world of chaos, or especially startup, or
totally,
uncertainty, I can call it. Like that's a
totally,
whole incredible realm to be familiar in. Maybe you could talk about that relationship with uncertainty.
absolutely. Look, I have this, and this is, I didn't make this concept up, or this saying is like, immigrants have a chip on their shoulder because they come to this country and they have something to prove for themselves, for the people who have doubted them, for the people that betrayed them, or left their country. They have something to prove, so they have this chip on their shoulder. That's why you see so many immigrants and as small business owners, big tech founders. Like, what, the top 15 tech companies on the planet are from immigrant, are the founders are immigrants. So it's this chip on your shoulder, right? So you have that. So growing up, I always had a chip on my shoulder, and I still do. And that translates so well into startups and tech ecosystem and high pressure, high impact environments. And then the uncertainty, to your
Yep.
point, like, we came here with nothing. My father worked 2 jobs. My mother worked 2 jobs. My sister and I basically raised each other because my parents worked 15 hours a day. And we didn't know when the next meal was going to come. We didn't know what was going to happen. There was like gang violence and gunshots outside of our home. So that uncertainty turned into fear, strength, trauma, and put that all together. And I hate to say this, but if you translate that into running a startup or building a fast-paced company, it's all of that. Just uncertainty, there's trauma, you're scared, you have people's livelihood are depending on this business because you're paying, there's payroll. And that to me was like, man, if I can go through that in my life, missing 1/4 of revenue is not the end of the world, right? A board member yelling down my throat, though I don't like it, is not going to kill me. Like, bring it on, right? And that helped create this shield, this like tough skin, especially that you need in sales and tech and startups. And yeah, for better or worse, man, that helped me become who I am today in the professional career world.
Yeah, it sounds like the ultimate training ground for adversity.
Totally.
Where does the spiritual component come in? Like when you're little, like were you raised in a certain faith, or was there
Yeah,
just this overwhelming sense of your dad, like, look, we're gonna make it, or your mom, like, look, we always get through it, or what
yeah.
what was the spiritual component there?
No, there was really no spiritual component at home. My parents, by culture or upbringing, we were Muslims,
Right.
but we didn't practice Islam. My parents were actually anti, right? Because
Okay.
we tied all of the distress and pain in our
Ah,
country to Islam because of the government takeover from the Islamic from a monarchy
right.
to, or from a democracy to a monarchy to an Islamic republic. We tied all of that back to, so there was always a disdain for religion, all religions, because that's how my parents felt. Though they believed in God, and you would hear, like, may God help us and those kind of
Yeah.
sayings. Yeah, even now, like, you bring up religion around my house, my parents are like, no, don't even talk about it. So I grew up with this disdain for religion, and I studied a little bit of the Bible, the Quran, and
Sure.
other scriptures. But in the back of my mind, I was like, no, 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 this isn't right. This doesn't feel right. This isn't, this is a man-made thing. You're forcing, and you're molding your you're molding what you want this to look like within religious text, aka the Islamic Republic. Like, oh, you have to do it this way because the book says so. So all of these things were like, yeah, this doesn't work for me. So I grew up with that disdain. However, there was this moment in my life, I call it probably like my teenage years, 16, 17 years old, behind closed doors at home. I found myself attracted to like meditation music. I was reading, like watching YouTube videos on like metaphysics.
Mm.
I was listening to like Native American tribal music, chants, and I always had this deep connection to it. And then that turned into like reading ancient Persian poetry, like Hafiz and Rumi, these like
Yeah.
metaphysical, beautiful
Right.
beings that like that had this connection with God and universe. And I was like, whoa, shit, there's something
Yep.
here. I don't know what it is, but there's beauty and depth behind it. So I was really attracted to it without understanding what it was. And later on in life, like understanding that that's spirituality, the connection to God and universe has nothing to do with religion and text and script. It's the oneness, it's the wholeness of the universe. And that kind of translated later on in life of like, I see, you know, um, one of my first experiences with psychedelics, I had this immense moment where I was like, oh shit, God is real. And that moment like blew my fucking head off, because it was like, wait a second, all these things that you hated and disdained and believed to be fake is like, wait a second, what's going on? This feeling, this connectedness to universe and God. It's like, interesting, there is a God. And then I was like, oh wait, I am God. We're all God. Like there's a
Yeah.
God within us. And I was like, okay, I get these drugs out of my head. I can't take it anymore. It was like, get it out. But then I started really like sitting with that and understanding the depth. And I was like, I see. There is a distinction between religion and spirituality, and there's also a correlation with that as well. And I was like, I see the beauty in religion. I see the beauty in faith and spirituality. I'm still not a religious person, but I do believe in a higher being, and I do believe in the universe being the guiding source of everything in this planet, and consciousness is just that. So we can go down that rabbit hole, but I think that answers your question.
It totally does. I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to so many cool people, and there's always, on some level, I always go back to this idea of, in the Gospel of John and the Gospel of Thomas, they call him Doubting Thomas because he never believed in Jesus. He's like, man, you didn't die. I don't believe anything you said. Like, he guy never believed anything, but he was the only one that Jesus showed up to, was like, here, come touch it then.
Yeah.
Come touch my wound. Put your hand in my wound, son,
Yeah.
And I think so many people in the startup, or so many people that find themselves like, I don't believe it. That's bullshit. I don't believe it. Like, fuck, I don't believe it. Like, that's the test. That's the test to see the oneness. It's like, oh, you don't believe it? Then the universe just comes to you and is like, let me show you. Oh, mister, I don't believe anything, and you get tested. And like,
it's so
all
true.
of a sudden, right? It's so crazy. Like how that particular story always resonates with people, man.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's
what?
And I think psychedelics are a catalyst here, but I think there's also obviously other modalities that gets you to this point of like awareness, if you will. It's as humans in this waking life, we are so we are led by our ego. We are led by our prefrontal cortex. I understand why. It's to save our life. It's to not get eaten by, wolves. And it's also like, we have bills, we have family, we have responsibilities. So this, like, call it the matrix mindset that we're in. Deep down inside, I believe every human knows that there's a God, there's a universe, and there's this massive oneness, but we are so scared of that. We are so scared of like that realization, because it changes everything. It changes everything. It flips everything on its back. And you're like, and people just, it's almost like, I think, I shouldn't say I believe, but I think that one reason why people can't grasp the fact that there's other intelligent life is because our brains cannot process that. Because once that happens, it's like, it's going to be like malfunctioning. Like, wait, we're not the only, humans on this like massive universe of universes times a million. So I just think we're just deep down inside, we know, but we are just scared because it's going to fuck up our everyday life because it changes everything. It's just things just don't matter as much as they used to, and that's scary.
Yeah, well, it's called the default mode network for a
Yep.
reason. You know what I mean? Like it messes up society. Like, and if you could,
Totally.
you can make the argument that that's why it got shut down in the last wave that happened. It's like, look at these
100%.
crazy
100%.
fuckers, dude. What
Yeah.
about all the people that need to work here? What about society? What about rules? We can't have this. Like,
Yeah.
it's mind blowing to think about.
That's the biggest reason, aside from an overwelming ideology of racism.
Yep.
That's the reason why the war on drugs happened, is because they knew, aside, again, the racism was probably the main reason, but they knew that people would shut off their default mode networks, and they're like, wait, I'm not going to war, I'm not going to the assembly line, I'm not going to go to this like indoctrinated school the way that you want me to do it. So there's like all this like pushback against societal norms, and that's a big reason why, of course. Yeah
I think it harkens back to the beginning of the conversation. Like if you're born into a comfortable family, everybody has problems, everybody has trauma, but if you're born into something that is comfortable, you're born with the default mode network and blinders on. Like, but if you're built into chaos, like, hey, wait a minute, that's fucking dumb. That's bullshit. Why am I? I'm not going to do that. Like you're born. It's almost like a feral child in some ways. It's crazy to think about.
100%. It's wild. I mean, oh man, we could talk about this for hours. But just yeah, I mean, yeah, we talk like for hours.
Okay, let me shift gears here and get to the third part of my title before we start digging into some super deep stuff. But
amazing.
After your recent experience at Burning Man, where self-expression and radical thinking thrive, what lessons did you take back into your professional and personal life
from Burning Man? Oof.
Yep.
Yeah. So this was my first time going to Burning Man. It was 3 weeks before Burning Man. I made the decision. My partner was like, yeah, just screw it, go. And I was like, wait, what? Oh, okay. 2 kids at home. And I mean, she puts up with my shit all the time. So big shout out to my partner. But 3 weeks before, I was like, okay, let's go. So all of a sudden I'm like, enthralled in what's all of the planning and packing lists. And, everybody has these like, don't do this, don't do that. And I was like, and I have many friends that have gone. So there was always this allure of wanting to go. So I was like, you know what, screw it. About a week before, it very much felt like when you're preparing for a ceremony or you're sitting with medicine, it was like all this anxiety is coming up, and like, what happens if I don't do this? My thoughts, am I going to die in the desert? Am I going to like dehydration? And like all this like spirit, like your brain is literally like, oh boy, you're about to go into something, in uncharted territories. I was like, oh, again, I've been here before. And I was like, okay, so start preparing, intention setting. And then the default guy comes in. It's like, you got to make plans, put your print out, because you won't have Wi-Fi, print out all the camps you want to see, all the DJs you want to see. You have 100 friends that are going to be there. So you got to make sure you find all of them, all these big fucking lists. Well, let me tell you, Burning Man, the playa decides how you experience, how your time is experienced there, right? Simply put, the biggest learning for me was what we talked about a little bit earlier. I have crippling anxiety, and I have the need to control outcomes. And
perfect spot for you then.
Perfect spot. So 12 hours into the playa, I'm getting leg cramps from dehydration. There's dust everywhere. I've gotten lost 20 times in my first 12 hours. And that just became this theme of like, I just need to surrender and really understand that like you can't control the outcomes, man. You just got to surrender to the experiences. And there's these serendipitous moments that started happening at Burning Man. Like the moment I recognize, and this translates so well into the default world, is like the moment you start surrendering and just going with the flow, these serendipitous moments happen. I started bumping into my friends that I was trying to look for the day before and I didn't. I started bumping into these moments of like, I haven't eaten in 10 hours. I should probably eat something. And I was, you know what? I'm not going to die. I have protein bars in my bag. I'll eventually eat something. I bump into a camp that's making this amazing soup. And then all of a sudden I meet new friends. It's like, I see. There it is. Like, just go with the flow, surrender, man. And that crippling anxiety of wanting to make sure everything goes well and it's by the book, or like this process, right? I'm a tech guy, I'm an entrepreneur. So it's like process orientation, like project management, my way through fucking Burning Man. I was like, you can't do that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest learning for me coming back is like, man, I'm excited to go back next year because I'll do so many things differently. But the most important is like, I'm just going to surrender. And I had 3 big initiatives, big deadlines the first week back from Burning Man. And that is exactly what I did. I was like, deep breaths. I've been here before and I surrender. And at that moment, this is going to sound so dramatic, but the moment that I said those 2 words or those 2 mantras, things just started coming to me through meditation, through downloads, through my inbox popping up of like, I've been waiting for this email for 6 weeks.
Yep.
And I've been stressing about it, and there it is. And I was like, this is insanity that this is happening at this moment. Like, what the hell is going on? And I just, this reminder again, I went on a little rant there, but there's so much deeper with Burning Man, like 0 expectations of, I had an idea, but until you go, you don't really understand the power of the desert, the playa, and the serendipitous moments with yourself and the universe. It's a truly magical, ancient place, and you can party your ass off. Like, it's just
Totally.
it's really hard to comprehend. And I have a little bit of better idea what Burning Man is. So,
Yeah, it's amazing, and thanks for sharing it. I see this trend, and I know that I've gotten to see you on the backside of some accelerators and Carly's stuff, and I know Dennis has some stuff going out there. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because you've almost explained this idea perfectly, and it's this idea of experience over data. For so long, big tech has been data, 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 but it seems to me that we're moving into experience, experience, and experience. And I know you're building things too. Do you see this bridge, this sort of like journey from data to experience, and how does that parlay into what's coming?
Man, this is so hard.
I know,
because I just want to be like, no, I need to see the data. Like, show me the trends. Damn it, I need to see the trends because I cannot show success without a data point.
Yep.
And that is true to some extent. Like, I don't care how spiritual you are. I don't care how openness you are. There's something there with data points, especially when you're building a business, that I believe is important. However, the experience of it, the experience of just being part of whatever it is you're working on. Like, as an example, what I'm building now, an advisor of mine who I credit all of this to, an incredible human, this woman is, said, if you want to build, I'm building an integration platform. If you want to build an integration platform, then you have to live in integration. So your business meetings should be around pre-ceremony, ceremony, integration. That's how you structure. And I was like, but how do I capture this? How do I capture that? And then I just recognized, take a deep breath, and this moment of like living in that experience, living in integration, and just going with that flow. The downloads come. Your gut is probably the best indicator of a data point because it never lies to you. And when you start trusting your gut wholeheartedly, like unconditionally trusting your gut, I believe, because it has never swayed me wrong. When you surrender and you unconditionally believe in your gut, then you don't need data points to some extent, right? So that's where you see it's even hard for me to say that because I want to say, no, there's still data, but trusting your gut and going with that experience is so important. And serendipitous moments happen. They do. And I can go on this rant forever. The way I'm trying to build my business is not how I ran my businesses or was part of organizations the last 20 years. The grit's important. The chip on your shoulder is important. Success by any means necessary. There's some there, but there's this shift happening into an empathetic approach around
Mm.
oneness, wholeness, trusting your gut, and really, really surrounding yourself with kind people, not nice people. Nice people, I'm not a big fan of. Kind people. I hope I didn't offend any nice people, but kind people, and that is how you can run a successful business. So I'm experimenting with completely shifting how I have thought about and known how to run a business.
How do you define integration? Like, what's your definition of integration?
That's such a good question. My personal definition is taking an experience and embracing it into your everyday life. Um, we come out of these. Who says this? Duncan Trussell, who's
Mm.
an incredible comedian and philosopher
Yep.
of sorts, and just such a great mind. He always says that these psychedelic experiences or these big experiences are like fireworks. They're like fireworks shows, and they're great and they're grand and they're amazing, but at some point they fizzle away. So how do you take that grand experience into everyday life? And it's about oneness, being present and being self-aware of your surroundings at any given moment. And this perfect example of, yeah, I just sat with ayahuasca, I saw God, I know everything now, and I feel great. and does not translate to being back in the DC area or back in New York and going back to your norm, but sitting down with your kids, for example, going to the park and sitting in nature and being like, this is it. This is the integration. This is how I need to take those profound experiences and integrate in my life on a daily basis. The last thing I'll say is integration is such a Western concept.
Mm.
And I'm not saying it's wrong. Obviously, I'm building a business and
Yeah.
betting my livelihood on it. So integration is important, but it's a Western concept. In indigenous areas, tribes, countries who have been sitting with plant medicines for millennia, they don't have integration. Life is their integration. Plant medicine is part of their life. So they don't go and, take this plant medicine or sit with ayahuasca and then their shaman or, their relative is like, okay, in the next 12 weeks, you have to follow this protocol and check these boxes. No, it's like, great. You just sat with ancestral medicine. Go sit under this tree for the next couple hours. Go help your mom with making food or go spend time. That's integration. It's just being a part of life. So I went on a rant per usual, but I hope that answers like your question of what my definition of integration is and how I see it.
Yeah, it totally does. I'm often, my mind is blown quite a bit. I get to talk to some really cool people, and a lot of the people who speak multiple languages have a lot of different perspectives on the way they see the world and they interact in it. And it seems to me,
Yeah.
not only are you on in that particular arena, but you've also built companies in different countries. What kind of, can you maybe could speak about the different lenses through which you use to build things? Like, I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah. I spent a handful of years in Hong Kong. I spent a handful of years doing, working in international commerce. Spent in international business from sales and business development. Spent some time in London. I grew up in, I didn't grow up, I was born in Iran and I have deep connections in the Middle East.
Right.
What I have found that has been the catalyst for working in different environments in different countries is respect and hospitality.
Mm.
I just had an aha moment. Respect and hospitality is the way you embark in international relationships, really in any relationships, but international relationships, because you respect the culture, the language, and who you're speaking with or working with at a different country. That's number one. And two, you're hospitable because you want to show that like you're here as a visitor, as a guest. And when you approach life and business that way in an international setting, that's how you build relationships, especially in Asian countries. It's all about like, for example, in China, in order for you to win the business with an organization there, you're not going to do what you do here in the US, which is like pounce on them, tell them you have to get this because you're going to lose all the money. No. You spend weeks and months learning about them, they take you out for drinks, and you're not even talking business for like 75% of the sales process. And then the last 25% is like, okay, we like you, we trust you, you're a human being, you're hospitable, you're respectful. Now let's talk business. And we don't do that enough here in the US because, again, data, pressure, fast pace, returns on investment, blah, blah, blah. So in that international environment, those are the ways that I found so much success is respect and hospitality, by embracing those cultures, by embracing their food and their music and just understanding. And you know what? On the continuous rant here, like it goes a long way to learn a few words in that language. I don't care if it's Mexico or Thailand, like learn 2 or 3 words. You're not supposed to be an expert. You're not going to hold a conversation, but the fact that you went out of your way to do that, it goes a long way in as a guest, as a visitor, as a tourist, or as a business associate. Again, these are all trivial to some, but it's such an important aspect of life that can translate really well in here in the Western world or in the US.
I see a common denominator in the ways in which you have found success and experience in other countries in doing well out there versus science and spirituality. And what I mean is, if we look today at like Lycos or some of these trials that are happening, in the West, we're really good at, trying to measure what we can manage. We throw out anything else. Like there's no sort of, we only want the hard facts in science. I don't want anything that's unmeasurable. But you're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I was talking to Erica Dick a while back, and she was saying things like, in the 60s or in the late 50s, they had these incredible questionnaires that were like, okay, your husband was an alcoholic. We have used psychedelics to help him. Here's a question for the family. Is your husband less of an asshole now? But all of these other metrics that may not be hard evidence, we don't really use those anymore, but it seems similar. Like when you go to another country, hey, we're going to have drinks. Let's talk about your family. Let's talk about your philosophy a little bit. Do you see, is that, and it seems like that's kind of what you're incorporating into your integration business, is managing these transcendent events, or managing these events that might not have hard data, but maybe you could talk about integrating these things you've learned into what you're doing now.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just hit it spot on. I couldn't have said it better than how you just explained it. So thank you. So you answered your own question. Next question. No, that's awesome. I mean, look, I think I have a lot of comments around Lycos and all of the things that's happened with the FDA, but it's not my place to interject here because I'm not an expert in that world. But I will say that in order to bring stuff to the masses, to the market, you need to look and feel like a pharmaceutical company. Unfortunately, there's no other way around it. And I don't care who you are, what you believe in, what indigenous background you have, or what Western background you have. If you want to bring something into this capitalist environment, society, you have to look and feel like one. Hard stop. And I will say, and so I have a lot of like respect for Maps and Rick Doblin and Lycos and what they've done and what they're trying to accomplish. But at the same time, like, you may have to sit next to the devil. Like, it is what it is. Like, there's no other way, right?
Totally.
Like, there's no other way. And again, I'm not an expert, but I do believe that that's the only way or the best way to get into the market. And I will say this, like, this is my last rant about, I know this wasn't the question, but after, with MDMA, which I respect that drug, that medicine so much. For me personally, it's always been a social medicine, social drug, like events or get-togethers, just like being around awesome people and having deep, amazing conversations, or like listening to music. And for the first time, actually, at Burning Man, I had a therapeutic healing experience with MDMA by myself. It was like sitting there with so much love and compassion and empathy for me and all the different parts of me. And there was this moment of like, oh shit, I get it. I understand the power of MDMA for healing and helping people in this world. At that moment, because I never experienced it in that way. And I was like, oh my God, this is a beautiful, beautiful medicine. This is a beautiful drug that can truly help people. And I started thinking about like going through a mental Rolodex of all the people in my life that this would help. And that gave me another like level of respect of like what these organizations are trying to accomplish with, you know, legalizing MDMA therapy. So sorry, I
No,
had
it's
to
all
say
good.
that because it's been such top of mind. So your question around like how I try to envision my business is, I'm pausing because this work is the most important work I've ever
Yeah,
done in my
take your time, man.
This is the most important work I've ever done in my life, and I don't want to fuck it up because it's bigger than me. Um, I'm just the vessel, the channel. I'm building something that is going to give practitioners tools to be better at their jobs, which in turn is going to heal and help people become better versions of themselves and hopefully pass that down to their friends and family and so forth. So there's a lot of pressure that I'm putting on myself because I'm not just another tech bro building some fucking app. I'm building something that is going to help people, and that's all I care about. And is that is the premise. And the people that will work with me, that are working with me, understand this, know this, live this, breathe this as well. And they know the depth of how important this is to not just me, but to the world. So incorporating a mindset around it's bigger than us, we're impacting people's lives, and it's going to be hard is so important. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. And we're still leading with empathy and vulnerability. I'm a first-time founder and CEO of a tech company. I've advised founders. I've been in startups my whole life. I've built businesses for other companies. And being vulnerable, sitting in a room with my advisors or people and saying, guys, I'm scared and I don't know what I'm doing in this regard. I need your help, is the most freeing and liberating thing I can do and you can do as a founder and CEO, because I don't have all the answers and I don't know a lot of things. But that gives me the agency to be my full authentic self. And that gives my team and the people that I'm working closely with the agency and for them to be their full authentic selves. And that is, I believe, the formula to running a great business, whether it's in psychedelics or marketing or whatever, right? So thank you for giving me that space to talk about that.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing it. I think it speaks to the idea of oneness you were talking about, like being part of something bigger than yourself, allowing people to participate in something bigger than them. Like that is the foundation of an idea that can change the world, is when you're not excluding everyone, but you're inviting everyone in. Like, hey, I'm fucking out of my mind right now. Here's what I got. What do you guys think? How do we make this thing better? Then everyone gets a role in the leadership position on some level. I think on some level, let me phrase the question this way. As someone, and you may have answered this a little bit, but what you're building and your thoughts on psychedelics could play a role in healing or enhancing connection in both personal and corporate environments. I think that that's what we're seeing on the whole right now. Like, this is the first time, right? These big things that are happening with Lycos or MAPS, what it's exposing is not just a problem with MDMA or psychedelics. It's exposing a problem we have on the planet. Like, look at these two things together, right?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, it's happening now. You're right. There are retreats that are centered around CEOs and founders of tech companies. Ketamine therapy is obviously legal, and there are organizations that are providing services for companies to give their employees access to that. These are massive, massive things that are happening in the environment. But what is also happening is it's 20 years of toxic environments, for the most part, that I worked in, that I thought was the right way to approach life, to approach business, to approach the people you manage and lead. I was like, yeah, when you realize that that's not the way, it changes everything. It's just what I just talked about now. It changes everything. And the more like, and in the future, I have plans of like we're going to do offsites with my team, and we're going to probably go somewhere where it's legal, like in Portugal or Mexico, and we're going to sit with medicine together as a leadership team, and we're going to surrender to the medicine. We're going to be vulnerable, and we're going to learn and grow from that. And then we might not even talk business at all, but that's going to help us become better people, better leaders. And I believe that can be the formula for the greater masses of organizations. There's Silicon Valley, there's organizations that do that all the time now, but we're talking a small percentage compared to the globe or to the rest of the US.
I think you're touching upon something that is new to me, and I think it's sort of emerging out of the psychedelic space, and that's this idea of ethical scaling.
Yes.
Right? Like that. I think that you're at the forefront of that, my friend. Thank you.
Yes. Ethical scaling is so important because, again, there's so many parts of me, right? The Sabba on my shoulder over here is like, no, dude, 10x that shit. Like, build, raise as much money as you can, And then there's this other side that's like, that's not right. You need like-minded, mission-aligned people on your team, investors who understand that yes, growth is important, but not for like reasons that are not directly impacting the world or the mission of the company. And here's an interesting thing that's happening in the world. So if you look at, let's put psychedelics on the side, like industry-wise. If you look at tech companies, SaaS, software as a service organizations in the US, let's just use US for now. In the last 4 years, from like just after the pandemic till now, you started to see a shift. There's been so many things that are happening. It went from the world is pausing, we need to cut people, it's all about like preserving what you have. There's growth is not needed. To 2022 comes around, we're like, oh, we're on the other side of this. It's like throw all your money at employees over hire, from like Meta, Facebook to the mom and pop are hiring more than they need to all of a sudden in the last 18 to 24 months, they're like, oh, wait a second. This isn't about growing by any means necessary and over hiring. This is about being smart, efficient, and managing P&Ls, profit and loss. And it's like, wait, can we do better and more work with less? And it's like, wait a second, that's not the VC model. That's not the venture capital model. That's not the traditional tech model where you hire 3,000 people and you hope to just like do whatever you can. So now it's this shift of like, no, it's not about 10x growth, 5x growth. There's no formula. It's about doing better with what you have or less, because it's about efficiency, and it's about like saving cost savings versus, to your point, growing growing at unfathomable rates. And now venture capital still wants that, but you're starting to see a shift on how they're investing their money, who they're investing with. So yeah, that's an interesting trend that's happening, and it's still going on now. Aside from AI, which is like, you say the word AI and people are going to invest a ton of money because it's groundbreaking and it's going to change the world, and it already has. I see that's what's been happening. You're not seeing a big shift. You're not seeing a big focus on scale by any means necessary anymore.
When you write down if you're ever writing the word AI, like, just the letters, do you capitalize it or is it in lowercase letters?
That's a good question. Oh my God. I do it in so many different ways. I do like all capital AI. I do like A lowercase I, or all lower. Oh my God. I don't have no idea.
It just begs the question, like sometimes people see it as this formidable force that's going to take things away from them, or they look at it like as a friend and like, oh, this thing's going to help me change the world on some level.
Yeah. It's here to stay, and it's going to, life as we know it in the coming decade is going to look completely different from a work personal environment. And maybe I'm just like too optimistic, but I'm optimistic that it's going to be for the greater good versus the evil side of it, if you will.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's interesting to see the way in which it's simultaneously brought me to you and all these cool people on the planet.
Yeah,
And it's brought this circle around me that I can never access before. But in some
totally.
ways, it's alienating. It's just getting used to a new paradigm. How do you how do you, as a business owner, as a CEO, as someone who is a lover of life's mysteries, incorporate AI into your life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So business wise, with the platform, we are going to incorporate AI.
Okay.
It's something. And by the way, I just gotta say something. AI has been around for like 30 years. It's just now it's front and
Yep.
center. It's the big name. It's been predictive analytics has been around for decades. So I just wanted for the people that are scared or like, what is this crazy shit? What the stuff that you've been playing with on your phone and your computer and applications for the last 20 years has had AI in it. So I just want to put that out there for everyone. It's just bigger, better, stronger, and front and center. So I just want to throw that out there. Um, for the business itself, I believe AI is going to transform how we look at um, predictive models, meaning
Hmm.
me as an end user who wants to integrate experiences, whether it's psychedelic, breath work, meditation, whatever the modality is, AI is going to help me understand like things that I don't understand about myself, believe it or not, because
Yep.
we're tied to technology. And it's going to incorporate things like, hey, Saba, you slept 6 hours last night versus the 8 hours that you should be sleeping. Here's what you should be doing for the next couple of days, and we'll make this recommendation to your practitioner to help put together something for you. That's really powerful, and that's AI is going to transform. It's already transforming medicine and health. And then understanding like when to use the protocols because of the data points and the aggregation of all of that, like knowing when to use this part of the protocol versus this part because the AI is lurking in the background, and understanding these relationships. These are powerful because now practitioners can get even more prescriptive with their protocols on a client by client basis. That is powerful. Like right now, I can go download an integration PDF from the web from the internet, which would be good, and I read through it and I follow it. It's nice, but who I am today is going to be completely different than who I am in 6 weeks, in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks. And the things that happen to me in my life are going to change: sleep behaviors, diet, medicine, psychedelic experiences. So like,
Yep.
I can't just go back to this PDF that is just stagnant. I need something that is fluid, that flows with me, and I believe AI will help. So that's the one pocket for our platform that I believe will be massive help in everyday life. I use AI to do tasks for me that would take so much time, and now I can use that time to be more effective with my business. Pick up my son 30 minutes an hour earlier from daycare, from preschool, and take him to the park. So I use it for like administrative purposes quite a bit. Manages my inbox, it drafts emails for me, and then I also use ChatGPT to ask for feedback on these long scripts that I put together, and it customizes it, it downsizes it, edits it, and these things that would take hours and hours in a week, now are a fraction of my time. And I think that's just like, man, that's scratching the surface, George.
Yep.
Like,
I know.
I am not an AI power user, but I use it enough to know that like how powerful it can be. And very soon it's going to incorporate in my phone. If you saw the new Apple
Yep.
announcement, like Siri AI is powerful. Like it's going to start building recipes for me based on like the trends that of like what I'm cooking for my children or for myself, like, and then start creating grocery lists. Like, please automate that stuff. Like, I want to live life. I want to be present, and I want to focus on things that are important. And I can't afford a personal assistant right now.
Yep.
So those are the ways that I'm incorporating AI.
It's mind blowing. I a while back on my Chat GPT account, I got this message that said memory full. I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean memory full? And like, I go back and I didn't realize that Chat GPT keeps a running tab of all the
Yep.
conversations I've ever had with it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I just sat and I looked at my memory for a little bit, and I'm like, no wonder the answers I've currently be asking and the relationship I've had with it are so
Yeah.
incredibly detailed and
It's
so like
beautiful.
so unique to me. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, it's a whole side of me that like, I'm pretty beautiful. I didn't know this. Thanks,
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. Hey, you are beautiful, man. That's awesome. Yeah,
I
that's
think,
cool.
yeah. So let me ask you this one. It does seem to me that there's a really fascinating bridge between the evolution of awareness, and we see it in psychedelics, and on some level, we see it in startups. Like startups is a evolution of awareness. How do you see
Totally.
that relationship between those two things?
Between psychedelics and startups.
Yep.
Yeah. So I want to tag on something to my
Yeah,
previous
please.
comment really quickly. Is the purpose of AI and automation and these tools, and this isn't a plug for what I'm building, is to get us away from technology even more and bring
Interesting.
us back to nature and
Okay.
community. Here's how I look at it. The
Okay.
more you can automate the things in your life that take time, like I mentioned earlier, and the tools that can help you get to a place of clarity, awareness, presence, grounding, then the faster is like, I'm going to go put my feet in the grass. I'm going to go
Yeah.
and meet my friends and spend time with community. So, yes, being another device, another app, another platform, it's grueling, it's heavy. I'm first to admit that I have a problem. I spend a lot of time on my phone. However, when we start optimizing these areas in our life, it gets us back to community and nature, which I believe is probably the number one thing we should all be doing in life, is being around people that we care about face to face and being outside. So I want to just premise that, like, that's why
Yeah.
automation and technology is important and can be used in the right way. And I believe that there are tools that can help us get back to nature and oneness and community. To answer your
I love it.
question with psychedelics and startups, there's two things that stand out to me. I have a kind of a thought process or philosophy that has translated on both sides of that world. Number one, when you're sitting like on the psychedelic side, when you're sitting with psychedelics, there are a few. I won't go through all of them, but there are a few things that really stand out to me. Right? There's when you're in journey or ceremony with psychedelics, you are vulnerable. You are transparent with yourself and vulnerable. You surrender to whatever it is that comes, because you can't push back, because we know what happens when you push back. It's wild shit happens. And so you surrender to what is about to come. You're transparent, you're vulnerable. In business, as a leader, you should be doing those same things that I kind of highlighted earlier. So as a leader, you're vulnerable, you're transparent, you surrender, and you say like, hey, I'm scared right now because of these things, or I'm worried, or I can't do this. I know I'm the CEO, but I can't do this. And that makes you a better person. It builds trust. It makes your team go to bat for you. So like, there's that. Number two is like doing hard shit. When you're sitting in with plant medicine work, it's going to get hard. It's like, there's no doubt about it. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. Right. And those are the moments that you learn a lot and figure out the things that are most important to you. So you're doing hard shit with plant medicine work. And again, when you realize that, and you know, the relationship I have with mushrooms, for example, is like, they're cheeky bastards, man. They come, I know when I'm sitting with them, they come to me, I'm like, this is how I talk to them. I'm like, dude, I see you. I know what's about to happen. Okay, fine. Yep. Damn it. Okay, let's go. And I laugh into this hard part, but you're doing the hard things. In startups, same thing. As a leader, as a company, you're going to do hard things. You have to do the hard things to be successful, because it's just the nature of the business. You have to, any business you run. So there's these things that translates from psychedelics to startups. I have a whole list. I have like the 6 frameworks that I believe in that I'm happy to share after this for notes or anything. But they are mirrors of each other. It's kind of mind-blowing when, you know, I did an interview or podcast a year ago, and they sent me like some pre-vetted questions, and I started like not jotting it down. I was like, oh my God, I'm looking at like the left and right comparisons. I'm like, this is insane. You know what? I just made a framework for myself that I think could be powerful. So these are just a few of them that like are tied directly to each other.
It's it's interesting to think about the difficult situations you get in when you're under the influence of something. And like
Yeah,
there are some dangerous spots in there, man. Like I've
totally.
found myself crying or been like, holy shit, I don't want to think about it. And one thing that I've learned is the more you tell yourself you don't want to think about it, the harder it comes at you. And
Yeah,
it's kind of a
totally.
metaphor for life, right? It's like it's teaching you, simulating,
Yeah.
like just think about it, embrace it, and then let it go. Like that
Yep.
seems to be a formula that works in those tight spots and translates to real life.
100%, man. Over the years, we're always told, and not to knock, I'm not knocking anyone
Right.
or any guides or
Right.
practitioners that say like write down your intentions and use your intentions during ceremony. I still do it. However,
Right.
when that moment hits where I have in ceremony or I've taken the medicine and I know that it's going to take over, like those intentions go out the window. The only intention I have is I surrender. Like, there's nothing else you can do, right? And to
Right.
your point is like when that thought comes, you're like, okay, we're here. I don't want it, but I understand why it's here. Like, let's
Right.
go. I surrender to whatever it is. And when you get to the other side of it, like this is just like life. When you get to
Yep.
the other side of fear, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like, yeah, it was scary. It kicked my ass a little bit, but I'm better, I'm stronger, and that was actually like really exciting. Again, I've been here before, and
Yeah.
that's just such a powerful thing, powerful lesson in life, like from sitting with plant medicines.
Yeah, I've heard a good saying that says that the people most likely to create the future are the ones, or the best way to predict the future is to create it. And it seems to
Yeah,
me, as someone like yourself who's involved in the psychedelic space, where do you see the most potential for innovation within this industry?
yeah. I mean, one is automating outcomes. Like again, we can't control them, but what we can do is put tools in place that allows practitioners, for
Right.
example, to get back to the core function, and that is building relationships and helping people through the work that they're doing, their trauma, their PTSD, whatever it may be, and not working on administrative stuff, automating stuff. Let the tools and technology do that. I think that's number one. I believe there's a huge opportunity to redefine or
Hmm.
adjust these retreats. Like there's
Nice.
thousands of retreats out there, and I've been to a handful, and I'm not saying it's bad. It's just they're all for the most part doing the same thing with insane prices, which I understand why. Like I
Right.
respect them and I understand why those prices are high. There's margins, there's staff, the legality of it. Like, so I
Hmm.
get why the costs to some extent are the way they are. But if you are able to build your retreats like a startup and be efficient and automate things that are not part of the day to day, that can help people who don't have enough money to join a retreat but really desperately want to. Like there's ways that we can change the retreat ecosystem and
Hmm.
not make it a Four Seasons type thing, or a really dingy thing where you're like fearing for your safety. So like there's this middle ground that I think that some retreat centers can make adjustments there, and I don't want to get too like in the weeds there because I don't want to ruffle too many feathers, but I just think that there's ways that we could um, give access to more people in the retreat environment. And then the last thing I'll say is like education.
Hmm.
There are so many certification programs, and as they
Yeah.
should be, but if you look at education technology, like outside of psychedelics, like ed tech companies that have revolutionized or innovated in education systems, whether it's higher ed or K through 12, what they've done, what a lot of these organizations have done that has been powerful is providing tools that are easily accessible and easily digestible for people to learn.
Yep.
And that has made the ed tech industry what it was for the last 20 years. And it's kind of in a little bit of a slump now, but the giving access and digestibility to people to learn in ways that makes them better is so important versus the traditional, like, education was like
Yep.
text, go to a campus, follow these. It doesn't work that way all the time. And then same thing in the psychedelic side, like some people cannot afford or don't have the time to go
Yep.
to a 12-week program where they have to sit in a Zoom every week and then do their homework assignment. You have to create different ways to educate people. There's a huge, I believe, and maybe someone can do this, that can innovate the education component or the certification component of the psychedelic space.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's fascinating to see all the different certification coming up and the different schools that are popping up. And in some ways, I feel personally that when the instrument becomes an institution, it loses its ability to function.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean by that? Like
Yeah.
it becomes, the blade becomes corrupted once it becomes an institution, probably because of the lack of experience that's transmitted. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, look, again, at some point you have to figure out how to run a business and make sure that like you don't go out of business, and you have to pay more people, right? There's margins, and it's important to be rigid and structured, but the moment you start institutionalizing or maybe going too far into the side of institutionalization, you start losing people, and you start losing like the allure of why you did what you did. I don't have an answer for it, but what I do know is that between innovation and customization, there's this world where you can still run a business effectively and not get too rigid, and still be fluid enough to make changes and pivot as faster than you normally could in an institution, right? Like in order to like move things at like the University of Southern California, it takes time, right? Like big higher ed institutions or any big companies, it takes time to move the train, right? Like it's red tape and rigid, and that's where it gets scary, in my opinion. I just had another thought and I lost it, but yeah, that's kind of my thought around that.
You know, a lot of the times in our conversation and in other conversations we have with people, there's this sort of embodiment in these substances, whether it's mushrooms or LSD or, you know, ayahuasca. People talk about these images, these people, these entities that they see. Do you think it's possible that maybe this embodiment, whatever this spirit is that's embodying these plants, doesn't want to be commercialized?
Oh, absolutely. Totally. Like I look there. I was at a conference last year, and there was this booth that was selling ayahuasca tinctures. I was like, what are you doing? I don't understand it. And I don't get it. I saw like ayahuasca gummies. Like there's things that this just needs to stay sacred. I don't like, it just has to stay sacred. I'm all for commercialization. I think it's good to go to the masses to some extent, but there are sacred medicines that need to stay sacred, and you just got to stay away from it. And medicines are living beings, like plant medicines are living beings. They have consciousness, they have awareness, and some of them are higher beings. And the moment you start fucking with them, they're going to fuck with you. And there was this beautiful, I was at the same conference. There was this beautiful talk I was at with, I don't remember the details, but there was an indigenous panel, and it was amazing. And what they talked about was the commercialization of like all of the sacred medicines over time. And one of them was like tobacco. It was like tobacco was an ancient medicine. Tobacco was an ancient plant that we respect and revere. So in the moment that the white man or the Western culture commercialized it, that is when it turned its back on the people and became toxic and poisonous, not only because of the shit they put in it, but also because the consciousness of the medicine. It was like, and so they push back, the medicines push back, they have the consciousness. So it's like this really interesting balance that I don't have the answer to. And I am, the thing that I'm trying to do for my business is like, I'm not in the plant medicine business specifically, is like, I mentioned this earlier, I'm just the vessel. My goal is to surround myself with councils of elders and practitioners from all sides, Western, spiritual, indigenous backgrounds, that can help guide the business in the way that respects the indigenous practices, the ancient medicines, but also understands the scientific rigor and the Western, world we live in today. So I'm really torn, but there are medicines. My final thing is there are medicines, plant medicines, psychedelics that you just leave it alone. Just let it be ancient and let it be sacred. Sorry, let it be sacred and do not commercialize.
It's it brings up a really fascinating point that I often think about, and it's the idea and the place about the place for ceremonies and rites of passage. And it
Yeah,
seems on some level, if you think about a rite of passage, or for many people you could think about a mythology, and when you witness that mythology, or you grow up in a mythology, or you see this myth take place, let's just take a coming of age ceremony for a young man.
yeah,
Maybe as a young man, as a child, I watch my uncle or my brother go through the coming of age ceremony where he has to run this
sure,
gauntlet, and then
yeah,
my dad participates on one side, and then my grandfather's on the other side. I get to participate in that ceremony at different stages of my life. So I experience time in a different way. And there's a lot of healing
sure,
modalities and a lot of understanding and wisdom that moves between that ceremony and that rite of passage.
yeah.
It seems, is that something that we can transfer into the digital age? I think that is something that's being asked of us. How do we come to a ceremonial setting or a rites of passage in a digital age?
Hmm.
I think it can be done. I don't have the answers to it, but
Yeah,
maybe the startup is. But I think that's the question we're being asked from the past: is how do we move this idea of rites of passage into a digital realm where other people can do it? And I think that you're uniquely qualified on some level to begin answering these questions, because you have built these things in different
yeah.
countries. You do
No,
speak multiple languages.
that's a great question and a good thought provoking statement is like, how do you do that? I mean, I don't have the answer either, but I do believe there are components of what I'm trying to do, and I
Right.
hope that it translates is one, this
Yep.
council of elders and practitioners. That's important. They're the guiding light into um, those, the rites of passages and these ancient traditions. Number two is, again, getting back to community and nature.
Yep.
We are a species of people that need to be around people and be outside. Like that's what it is, and that in itself is a rite of passage. Um, it's really hard in this digital age because we are just thrown into tech all the time and
Yeah.
everything. And everything, like, we're connected in so many ways. When I get in my car, I'm connected to tech. When I'm on my phone, on my laptop, like everything is just connected. And it's so hard to disconnect from that. I don't have the full answer. It's just, I know that it's like, I I personally believe it's just this respect and understanding of, like, if we want to move to this age of like getting back to our roots or getting back into what you just mentioned, is showing the respect, having people that are smarter, the elders that are wiser to help guide you versus being this bullheaded individual that thinks you know everything, right? Like,
Right.
so yeah, I don't have the best answer, but those are the things that come to mind.
It's awesome. I feel like we're at the forefront of solving some of
I agree.
these problems right here. And I got some. Are you okay on time? How you doing on time?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Okay, awesome. Then I got some sort of deeper philosophical questions I kind of want
Oh
to start
boy.
moving
All right.
into here. Okay. So psychedelics as cognitive time machines. We've spoken about this a little bit, but could psychedelics serve as a tool to bend or warp our perception of time, allowing us to access memories or even alternate timelines? If so, how might this change our relationship to past trauma and future aspirations?
Hmm. That's a big one.
Right?
I I do believe that psychedelics do warp our perception of time.
Right.
I also do believe that they do give us access. I believe all that.
Yeah.
We warp our time, our perception of time. They give us access to old memories, even like memories of past lives potentially, and
Right.
and give us access to the future. And I've experienced it firsthand personally on all fronts. And what I think is the important aspect of it is that, again, we've been here before.
Right.
The construct of time, of course, it's part of who we are in this world. But when you think about consciousness and oneness, there is no time in consciousness and in the oneness. It just is.
Right.
It's always just is. There's nothing else.
Right.
It's just there. Um, so when we put these boxes in of like past, present, futures,
Yep.
that's when we create these insecurities, these vulnerabilities, these misconceptions of what life is. So yeah, I do believe that's what psychedelics do, is open our, again, we are afraid
Yeah.
of this. We are scared because it
Yep.
changes everything. Once you realize that, it's like, how do you go back to your normal life without questioning everything? It's not possible. And I have been there where there has been moments in my psychedelic experiences where I have sat and watched the story of my life
Yep.
unfolding in different ways. And it's like,
Yep.
it's almost like choose your own adventure. It's like, I'm
Yep.
sitting there. It's like, Sabba, if you continue to do this, that is the path you're going. And I'm sitting there and watching it happen. I'm like, oh my God, like what,
Yeah.
if you go to this path, this is what, and it's like, whoa. And then the past stuff, I have felt and seen parts of myself and experiences of myself that I'd never experienced before. And I was like, wait, are you tricking me? Is this real? It's like, oh my God, yeah, this is part of me. This is the past life that I've had, or this experiences of past memories that I have blocked off in my mind because I didn't want to experience it or think about it. Yeah, it's there. And there's a reason why it's coming up. So let me go there. Let me sit with it. So yeah, I agree. And the last thing I'll say is, which is kind of related to all this, is like, healing should be fun. It doesn't always have to be hard and heavy and scary and, oh my God, I'm broken and
Yeah.
I need all the drugs and help me. It's like, no, it should be fun. It should be embracing, like, again, I want to be respectful of people that are going through like really horrible things in their life, and of course it's hard, but at the same time, like, you can do things that are fun to help heal those hard things, right?
Yeah.
And that's healing in its own. It's almost like with depression, like getting out and doing something and working, or getting your hands dirty in the dirt, or going outside. Those things help with the depressive state. And I think that also goes back to like past, present, and future of like how you see yourself evolving with medicines.
I love it, man. It
Yeah.
does seem on some level like we have approached healing with this negative stigma, but
Yeah.
shouldn't healing be like part of the ultimate success story? You know what I mean? Like you
Oh
heal
gosh.
yourself.
Yeah.
Like that's right
Totally.
there.
Yeah. I mean, I've fallen into that where like,
Yeah.
talking about my birth, it has always been
Right.
heavy and hard, but like, that should be fun. Like, look at me now. Like I'm a
Right.
functioning adult and I have 2 kids, and it's like, it's okay. Like, and the way I heal from that is have fun with my children and hug and laugh and joke, and like, it's a good thing. Like, the other parts of like, yeah, I mean, there should be fun aspects of healing. It's okay to be like, I'm broken and I'm gonna go dance my ass off. Like, it's okay.
Yeah. It's that old quote that says growth and comfort can't coexist.
Yep.
It's mind-blowing to me. Artificial intelligence and the collective unconscious. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
In your opinion, do you think AI could evolve to tap into this concept, perhaps even creating a digital form of the collective unconscious, where human thoughts, dreams, and archetypes merge into a new kind of consciousness?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's so scary to think about, but I mean, look, as we evolve as humans, like, again, time is a concept of like a construct. Like,
Right.
I'm not fully educated in this, but I do believe in the concept of like the transfer of consciousness after like our human bodies. So like the evolution of the human doesn't just end of like who we are now. I believe like because of technology, and technology isn't a like, how dare humanity make this? I think technology is just part of evolution. And soon we are going to, like a sci-fi movie, like I think there's this world where we don't have bodies anymore, and we're just conscious beings in some other form, whether it's a robot or a device or something, but we're still in this conscious space.
Right.
It's so trippy and weird to think about it that way, but it makes sense when you start thinking about what consciousness actually is. Like, I just saw this study recently that says that that this scientist is his hypothesis is that the brain doesn't control the consciousness controls the brain and everything else. Therefore, saying that consciousness is its own life and entity without all of these other things. There's something along those lines, and it has you thinking like, oh, yeah, I mean, there's so much validity to that, and what we're doing with what AI, what's happening with AI is like, it is going to it is going to download and have the collective consciousness of the universe, because that's just part of the evolution of mankind. Yeah. I'm not an expert on this, but I think there's something there.
It's profound in so many ways. It makes me think of the relationship between discovery and creativity. You know, there's that age-old argument of like, did we invent mathematics or we did discover it? It's the same thing.
Right.
It's true with AI too, right? Did we create AI or did we just discover it? Has it been waiting for us to like, hey, look at me over here. Hello, everybody. I'm trying to get your attention, you know? Like, it is the other awareness. It's our awareness growing to a point of maturity where we understand and we've discovered this. Now we can create. What are your thoughts on that? You have any ideas about creativity and discovery, or maybe you can add to that?
I have lots of thoughts on that.
I know you do, man.
I think creativity, you know, there's this guy Naval. He's like a VC, super like successful investor, technologist, but also incredible, beautiful mind, philosopher.
Yep.
And one of the things that he believes in with AI and the coming of age of with AI in the future is that AI is going to take over jobs that are like blue collar, or you know, things that don't really use your mind, for example. And it could be anything from like, you know, a janitor to, you know, like changing light bulbs. I'm using random examples. Right. And what that's going to help humanity with is like almost force people to use their mind more, to focus on the creatives, on the science, on medicine, and things that like you actually are using your mind way more often and are more creative. So that's a kind of like thing that just popped in my mind that I think is really interesting concept. Back to your question, I think creativity and discovery is just the way of life. Like I for the longest time in my life, I never considered myself a creative person because I had put this like unnecessary box around it that creativity is someone who knows how to like draw, paint, is right, you know, is like not normal, if you will, or like they're just a different type of mind. But what creativity actually means is like you giving yourself the space, the confidence, and just non-judgmental environment to do whatever it is you want, in whatever world. Like in tech, if you want to be creative in how you approach your, you know, your sales function, like that's creativity. Like I don't want to do the normal stuff. So I come from this place of like non-judgment and openness. Creativity is that. And what psychedelics does is shuts down, as you know, the prefrontal cortex, and it shuts down that ego, and it just opens you up to this whole new world of like, I see why this flower blooms the way it does. That's just natural, like the way it is, and that's creative on its own. How can I, like, then it's like, wait, I can incorporate like this beauty into my own life. It took me many years, and especially as of late and recently, to recognize that with creativity comes a lot of responsibility. And here's what I mean. We as humans should be obligated to build whatever it is that building is, to build a better environment, a better world for ourselves and for the future of children or people. And creativity gives you that. Creativity allows you to take risks, allows you to have fun, allows you to tap into your inner child. And the more we can tap into our inner child, kids don't give a shit what you think when they build stuff. They just do it, and they think it's the greatest thing on the planet. and that is so wise on its own. And that's where I believe is like this beautiful like place of discovery and creativity, is just like, be a child, be free, and just do something, just write, build, whatever it is that you want to do. And that on its own gives me this like feeling of like, yeah, I'm creative. I can discover and be creative. Hopefully that answered your question. It's just like, it's such a wild concept in my mind.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for sharing it. I think it speaks volumes of, on some level, the world that we were kind of, the world that we find ourselves working in is a world that doesn't always reward creativity. It rewards monotony. It rewards
Correct.
the cog in the wheel. And maybe that's because we needed to have a society of shared sacrifice and wartime.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it was, but
Right.
but it does seem like this creative spark is contagious. When I talk to people, I can see a similar through line, this Ariadne thread that runs through the maze of like, hey, look at this person found a thread and then they followed it and it took them there.
Yeah.
This person found a similar thread, but it took them there. And I get goosebumps when I think about it because it's
So true.
contagious, right?
So true. So true. Yeah.
It's interesting too to see. I know in psychedelics we often talk about things that are ineffable. We find ourselves in situations where I get so clear, but then I try to tell you about it and it's gone.
Yeah,
You know, it's almost like we're grasping for this idea, but maybe that's the next dimension of language. You know, we're putting together images, we're putting together conversations that have feelings. And in this conversation, both of us, I got goosebumps. Like, what is that? Is that real? Is that what meaningful dialogue looks like? Is that what we're headed to when we talk to each other? All of a sudden, I understand what you're saying. Like, how do you see the evolution of communication happening? And I know it's a big question, but
yeah, that's a big one. But like, my first thought was like, I saw this meme recently where it was like, hey, he's like, I just took some psychedelics. I can't wait to tell you about it. And it's this like face of like eye roll.
Yeah.
But no, it's, you know, for me personally, like the evolution of like relationships, communication, or how we, you know, like spend time with each other has really evolved. I still love the banter, small talk type of environment. It's just, it's part of life. But where I have come to this realization, and what has psychedelics has helped me, is like, I want to talk about deep things. Like, it doesn't have to be heavy, but it should be like deep and real. And I find myself, I've come to this space where if I'm in the right place with the right people, I'm going to talk about whatever is on my mind. And it also, what that does is creates a ripple effect of like, I created the space to be comfortable with sharing, and now someone else is like, well, if Sabba is sharing about this, then you know what, I feel pretty good, and maybe I may want to share about it. And it just opens up this dialogue of like, let's really get to know each other and not just be surface level of like, oh, this is my political affiliation, or you know, I like this sports team, and it's deeper than that, right? And
yeah,
I do really think there's an evolution there, and getting people to do more drugs may help, but getting people in a space that you're comfortable to drop in and create an environment that you feel safe. That's the type of place, like, you know, when we throw these awesome like events, get-togethers here at our home, it's part of the psychedelic community, but it's also just like groups of friends. And we just sit in the backyard on cushions, and people just sit there and talk. And it's beautiful because they share everything. And, you know, sometimes there's plant medicine involved, and other times it's just, we're just there, like hanging out. And that to me is like fills my cup. Because at the end of the day, you're getting hugs and goodbyes, and people are like, I am so grateful that there's this space that we can talk about this. Like, wow. Like, what else is like, does anything else matter at that moment than having someone feel loved and feel like they can be themselves and they can share whatever it is they want, small or big? Like, does there anything else matter? Like, you know, like, what else does matter? That's community. That's love. And that to me is the evolution of like how we can continue like having relationships and talking and communicating. Yeah.
It blows my mind because early in the conversation you had referenced like Rumi and the Sufi poets, and
Yeah.
even medieval mystics. Like, there's something to be said about
Yeah.
meaningful dialogue that, and,
Totally.
and doesn't that also sort of harken back to what you said about AI freeing us up to be outside? Maybe being outside means being outside ourselves and having that meaningful
Ooh,
conversation, right? Like,
yeah.
and isn't the next logical step for people that are building companies to have their message, their core values about that company resonate like a Sufi poet? You know what I mean? Like, that's the
Yeah.
messaging that resonates with people, on some
Yes.
level.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're right. I mean, look, when you, if you go look, if you Google right now, what is a mission vision statement? It's very much that, right? The mission and the vision statement of a company is like, our mission is to do X. And it's this powerful message that brings people together, whether it's internal or external. And our vision is how we're going to get there. And it's like, oh my God, yeah, I'm for this. I want to buy this, or I want to work here, because it gives that same resonance and power to it. So that's why it's important. Like, I spent ungodly amounts of time on my mission vision statement and the manifesto, because it was my blood and sweat and tears and my heart and my passion, and I wanted it to resonate with people and the world, not just like, hey, come buy this. It's more like, I want you to feel this deep in your core, because that's why this matters. And yeah, that's there is that. And some companies do it well, and then of course they live and die by it, and others like put it in there and then don't really follow it. But I think like living that mission and vision statement, whether it's a company or your life, and kind of similar to what I said, it was like my awesome advisor who was like, you need to live integration. And it was like, yeah, you got to live it to build it, right? Like, so yeah.
It takes me down this other idea of, especially in startups, or if we can agree that an idea is a living thing, and you have an idea and you present it, usually in the startup community or even families or whatever, you invite people in to your idea versus hiring someone on. Is that the evolution of the chief philosophy officer versus HR? But what do you think about inviting people in instead of hiring people?
Yeah, I love that. So here's the thing, like, everybody has ideas. It's about actually doing something with those ideas or putting it out there. And not all ideas are great, but it's the confidence in putting it out there, I think, that is important. And the invitation I really like, because there's this, when you invite people to whatever it is you're inviting them, some are going to come and some are not. And I wholeheartedly believe in, let's say on the business side, or like if you're selling a product or a business, your product should and is not for everyone, and that's okay. That's okay. So like, you invite the people, you put this out there. Here's my invitation. Here's the description of my invitation. I invite you to come, and you just leave it there. And that is perfectly fine. And I love that, because I see my business, and I've been coaching teams for so many years of like, hey, we're not for everyone, and that's okay.
Right.
And to be a little bit cheeky, in a business setting, when you tell, here's a hot tip for anybody in the business world who's trying to earn business. When someone is giving you a difficult time trying to push back on your product or your pricing, when you tell them, again, you come from a place of like love and empathy and understanding, and say, hey, thank you, I understand, and this is not for everyone, have a nice day. Some people are like, wait, why is it not for me?
Right.
What do you mean it's not for me? Should I learn more? And it's not like, we're not tricking anyone. It's just saying that like, hey, this is not for you. And then it makes them think, well, why is it not for me? Am I looking at it at the right lens? Like, you know what? Pricing isn't the only problem. I'm so stuck on price. It is actually really important for me that I buy this, right? So it opens up this thought exercise of like, not everyone can be invited, but it's an open invitation type of thing. So a little bit of a rant because this stuff excites me, unlike strategy. But yeah, that's I like that a lot. I love the imitation.
How dare you bring it back to Bruce Lee and be like water?
Always back to Bruce Lee. Always back.
It's in like so you know, if we take it on a psychological level and we
Sure.
continue to push out on the tree a little bit, you know, as we integrate with technology, could we transcend traditional relationships? And like what might words like love or words like integrity, what might they look like in a world where consciousness can be uploaded, shared, and merged between humans and artificial beings?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know why this just comes to my mind, but I'll say it anyways, and hopefully it it answers this question or it's relevant. I'm going to use the broader we. I'm not saying everyone is like this, but I think a big population has or was or is like this, including myself. I used to be this way. We spend most of our lives thinking about the external, the promotion, the money, the house, the car, these things that feel like have a lot of meaning, and we put so much weight on it. And to some extent, some of them are important to have, but it's all external. A lot of it is external. And we forget or neglect to focus on internal, on what is our internal operating system like? What do we believe in? What are our visions? What are our thoughts? What do we believe in? What are things that are important to us, me internally, first and foremost? And I'll use me as an example. I spent most of my life being that external guy. And it brought me, from what I thought, a lot of success and feeling of like grandeur and feeling like I'm being loved and all of that, where deep down inside, it was all surface level. And when I shifted to focus on internal, like, oh my God, it is about me. And this was, of course, with plant medicine. It was like, wait, who am I? What do I believe in? What are my values? That was the moment where I was like, number one, oh yeah, none of that stuff matters. It's about internal. So when I am aligned with my internal operating system, then everything else will fall into place. The people, my relationships, my business, my work, because those are being aligned. I'm aligning what I believe in to the external stuff versus the other way around. And that was this moment of like, yeah, that's number one. And number two, I'm going to teach my son. He's going to learn street smarts. He's going to learn external. But the number thing, my son and daughter, the number thing that my kids are going to learn is know thyself, know internally who you are, what you believe in, and then everything that will guide you externally. So I say all that to say is, back to your question, is when we have this belief system of who we are internally, then love has no bounds. Like, whether with technology or not, like all of that is connected, but we know deep down inside that we have an anchor, and that anchor is our internal. So I think that connects the dot. If not, I'm happy to try again, but that's where my head went.
No, I love it. I had a really cool talk with Dr. Sebastian Marincolo, and he wrote part of his thesis on the idea of folk psychology, and he used words like love and, you know, these really big ideas. He goes, it's kind of like magic. Like, we don't really know what that is. So when I I asked that question because I think we are redefining these big ideas of what these things really are. Like, they were magic. We don't really know what's happening in the brain or the mind-body connection. And you know, it's so fascinating to hear you talk about explaining this concept of a huge term, not only in your words, but in generational terms. In some ways, you know, you're getting to see the evolution happen. I don't know. It's fascinating to me, man. Thanks for sharing it like that. That's cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
So here's another one too, that neuroscience meets metaphysics. If the brain is both a receiver and a transmitter of consciousness, could psychedelics and technology together allow us to tune in to other frequencies of consciousness, perhaps accessing the minds of others or even different life forms?
You just blew my head off. I mean, yes, there's something there. there's definitely something there. Like recently, um, I won't, for the sake of like security and safety. I was at a conference. It was a private setting where a group of neuroscientists put on a EMR brain scanner on me, and I took a hit of a DMT vape pen, and they,
Mm.
in front of like 25 people on a big screen, monitored like my brain functions of like what happens with the DMT. It was super fascinating. But the point that I'm like, what comes to my mind is like we connected a device to my brain that monitored the activity to it, and externally people saw it, and then the neuroscientists studied it and had this like
Yeah.
outcome from it, like, oh, the left side of your brain was firing on all cylinders when you took the first hit versus the right side or something like that, right? And so there's this huge belief that psychedelics are pathways to communicating to other spirits, to other people. So I think there's something there. Like we barely scratch the surface of like how our brain functions, and I mean there's so much there now, and there's so much amazing work. And I have some dear friends that are neuroscientists, but
Yeah.
we've barely scratched the surface. And I do think there's this like communication portal between
Yep.
psychedelics, the mind, and others. But again, man, you're asking the wrong person. But yeah, I've experienced some of it like personally, and then that EMR experience, like that was really cool.
Yeah, I love asking the deeper questions like that, because so many people that I speak to have sat out in nature during, after, or before a psychedelic journey, and it's like, we talk about it. Oh, I got this download, or I
Yeah,
heard this
yeah.
message, or I heard a voice. Like, it's really difficult for me, regardless of what word you choose to call it. That seems to be another entity speaking to us in some way, and it's happening
Yeah.
more and more frequently. And you can see it everywhere. The patterns are. I always give this example of. I remember sitting out in my yard before I left Hawaii, and there's this vine that would climb up a palm tree, and I remember just tripping out. Like, how does it know to climb halfway up that tree, and then at July 3rd at 3:33 p.m. it drops at a 43-degree angle? Like that is intelligence, and it's telling me
Yeah.
there's a plan. It's like I had a full
Yeah.
conversation with this plant, like not in words,
Yeah.
but in a
Yeah.
meaningful way. Like that's a real dialogue between us and nature.
Totally. This reminds me of like going back to consciousness. My therapist, actually, my therapist is a wise human. And we were talking about meditation, and
Nice.
he asked me, he was like, what is your what do you believe meditation is? And I, gave him my explanation, and he's like, yeah, that's one way to look at it. I was like, okay, so that means it's wrong.
That's hilarious.
Politely saying it.
Yeah.
But what he said was so mind blowing to me that I haven't been able to shake it, and I have it written down. And he said that meditation is a practice that reveals my true self to myself. And what he was describing is that there's two dimensions to our being. One is our conditioned self, our ego, that we have our, and then we have our consciousness. And our consciousness is this sense of presence, awareness, freedom. You can call it God, nature, etc. And he was saying that in meditation, what meditation does is brings us to our true self, and our true self is our consciousness. So when you sit with your consciousness starts talking to you in ways that it normally doesn't. Those downloads and
Right.
those words, and it could be, consciousness, like some people say consciousness is God, right?
Right.
Or Buddha state or Buddha nature, right? So we can say whatever that entity is, but consciousness is our true self. And it's in those moments of meditation where you are fully in consciousness, is like when you get those downloads or your awareness, your presence, and it's like, oh, I see, that does make sense. So back to that question you were just saying, yeah, like there is this like communication portal. And again, like every spiritual text says it in a different way of like what consciousness means, right? So I thought that was like important to share, because like it's super, like it's just, there's something there for sure.
Yeah, I think we're, again, as we are talking to different people, and you were speaking with some neuroscientists, I heard some really interesting ideas. Like, what would it mean if we classified psilocybin as an exogenous neurotransmitter? Like what would that open up? Like, oh, this is something that's part of
Wow.
us, but it's
Yeah.
not in us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just changes the lens. They say sometimes
Oh my gosh.
science dies one person at a time or something like that.
Yeah.
But we're on the cusp of it, Sabba. Like there's real radical changes that are happening in our lifetime that are going to fundamentally shift the way our children inhabit the world, man.
You're so right, man. You're so right. It's mind blowing and amazing.
It is,
and I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. I've taken up a lot of your time, and you know what?
Man, this has been amazing.
Yeah, I know, man. It's so much fun. I know. I hope you come back. My goal is to start doing some more panels and bringing in more people and bouncing that conversation around. So, but before I let you go, man. Before I let you go, I just want to say thanks again for everything. I hope everybody can go down to the show notes. I know maybe you can kick me some stuff I can put in the show notes when I publish it to the podcast. But go down and reach out to Sabba. He's doing all these cool accelerators. I always see him out there. He has got a really cool business he's doing. And I think that he's inviting the world to bring cool people to him. So go check him out. Reach out to him if you're interested in what we're talking about. Where can people find you? What do you got coming up and what are you excited about?
Yeah. First of all, thank you this was such an amazing conversation, George. You're the man, dude. This was awesome. And I will take you up on the offer of coming back because this is great. And I'm going to do it again. So just keep me in mind. So thank you. Where can people find me? On Instagram or LinkedIn? My LinkedIn is my first last name, obviously. Instagram is, and I'll send it for your show notes. It's Sabba, SABBA _get, GET, Zen, ZEHN. What am I working on? I'm so excited of the launch of this integration platform. The name is Safar. In Persian, that translates to journey. And we're building a beautiful tool that allows practitioners and coaches to manage their protocols, their integration protocols with their clients. I'm not saying it's groundbreaking, but it's going to be a game changer in the space. And the idea is that you're able to customize protocols for each of your clients and let them work on this app together so they can follow their integration and manage. And at the end of the day, heal and get better. More to come. Launch is going to be in the next 6 to 8 weeks. But yeah, stay tuned for Safar.
It's amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a beautiful day. Sabba, hang on briefly afterwards, but to everybody else, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope that you realize you're part of this magnificent transformation that's happening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Aloha.